Welcome to this episode of the Leading in Dentistry podcast. I'm Dr. Wes Eggett. After spending the last 20 years in a variety of leadership positions, and as a student of leadership myself, I started Leading in Dentistry to share what I found and to continue learning with you. If anything from this episode stands out, check out the show notes, our online courses, or one-on-one coaching on leadingindentistry.com. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Leading in Dentistry podcast. I'm Dr. Wes Eggett. For those of you new to the podcast, I am a practicing associate dentist just outside of Denver, Colorado, and I started Leading in Dentistry to help develop the leadership skills of each team member in the dental office. And I say this in every episode, but I started this podcast specifically while I'm not an owner of any dental practice, because I really want to get across the message that you don't need to wait until you're in charge to be a leader. In today's episode, I'm super excited to share an interview with Spencer Greer, and you may have seen him around. He is the guy that goes around talking about production and how to help dentists, especially associate dentists, but any dentist, to increase their production. And I was really interested in having this conversation because I've seen him talk about how to increase production and how to be in the right mindset as a dentist, but also I thought about all of the things that need to be in place for the team to be able to implement that type of mindset, that type of attitude, and make that type of production possible. And the conversation that Spencer and I had, I'll let him tell you more about who he is and what his story is. But it was super interesting to hear his side of things, where even though what he does is talk about production, really none of the reason for production is because of production itself. And I really wanted to make sure we hit on that in this episode because it really gets to the reason behind going for that production. It is what leads to that higher production and getting the team on board. So it's a super interesting conversation, one of the most interesting conversations I've had, and I hope you really enjoy this episode. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Spencer will say a little bit more about how to get in touch with him, but it was just such a great conversation, and I'm super excited to share it with you. So without further ado, let's get to the interview, and remember, always be leading and always be learning. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Leading in Dentistry podcast. I'm here today with Dr. Spencer Greer. Spencer, big fan, and I have been following you for a while. When I was preparing for this interview, I was listening to some of the old podcast episodes that you've done, and my brother-in-law, who's also a dentist, came by, and he was asking what I was listening to, and I told him, and he went and listened to it, and the following day, he went and had listened to a ton and said that he had a patient come in with food impacting between two teeth, and they accepted 2 same-day crowns, which I was very impressed with that. So I just wanted to use that as a little credential for anyone out there who's not familiar with your stuff. But I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself, and I'm just very happy you're here.
Awesome. Thanks, Wes. I am Spencer Greer. I live in Washington, even though I originally hail from Arizona. I never in a million years thought I would live in Washington State. I married a girl from here. I own 2 practices that I have currently partnered with a DSO in. I have full-time associates that make a ton of money. I have taught them how to produce well, but I have some really great teams that support them. And so I love the aspect of leadership in my teams. I always feel like my team is the liaison to the patient's experience. It's not the dentist, it's the team. They are the best representation of me. And so usually when we see Google reviews, the reviews are always, the words are always about the team. And so I love leadership. I don't hail to be the best leader, but I just try to lead with a good heart and just be, lead my patients, lead my doctors, lead my team, lead my family, all just with goodness in my heart.
That's awesome. And I appreciate you saying the part about heart, because one of the things that I teach with the Leading in Dentistry, again, I don't pretend to be an expert either. I just know that I consume a lot of information and I like to talk about it. And having a podcast gives me an excuse to pick people's brains like yours. So, but one of the things we do teach at the Leading in Dentistry is the TEACH leadership model. It stands for trust, expectations, accountability, consistency, and heart. And so heart is one of the pillars of the things that I talk about a lot. And it's just a way to break down what are the things that we talk about in leadership. Like, it's so hard to say, I want to be a better leader. How can I break it down in ways that I can focus on I can focus on developing trust. I can focus on setting expectations and accountability, holding people accountable, being consistent, and having a good heart there. So I appreciate you bringing up the heart part of that. One of the things that I think people who have followed you have seen your production on those days where you go on Instagram and you say, here's what our production is at the start, and at the end it's pretty impressive. Not just like a good day, but like, some people it would be like one of their top days. And I know that a lot of the success there, like you said, goes to the team and the way that you can work with the team in order to make it happen. So I just wanted to like get some ideas from you regarding those different facets of leadership: the trust, expectations, accountability, consistency, and heart. One of those we could start with and just see where this conversation goes and how you get your team to a point where if the doctor is willing to step in and do those extra crowns or do the endo, how do you get the team on board? How does that look in practice?
So I was coached back in 2020 by Justin Short, and he introduced me to a bonus model. Now, I don't think that a bonus is for everybody. It can be really dangerous. It can lead to a lot of entitlement. And so my current mentor, he says, benefits turn into entitlements faster than the ink dries on the check. And so we have to be very, very careful with that. I do have a bonus system which I like to lead with, but it's so important for us to not just talk about dollars with our team all the time, because then we become that dentist where people in the community, or after they leave our office, they say he's just talking about money. So I like to lead with the intention of all of our services that we do are good. We bill for what we do. We do what our patient needs or wants. Now, does a patient always want Invisalign or veneers? No, they don't always need it. So that's why I say either they need or they want. Now, it just is up to us to become more effective at getting the patient to say yes. So my niche has become production. I have become the guy who just says, hey, I can help you with more production. There's nobody else out there, but I had to put myself out there into the community. And it's not something easy. You know this feeling, like it's not easy to just put ourselves out there and get nitpicked and analyzed by other dentists out there. But when we feel passionate and good about something, we're just like, let's take this out there and let's see how it goes. So that's why I started doing what I was doing on Instagram. It's nothing to show off or to be like hoity-toity. I just want to make sure that people can see. And if they want to pay me for an opportunity to learn it, great. If not, no big deal. So I always tread carefully that it's not braggadocious, but it's just something where people are interested. When we grow, like yesterday, from a $4,000 to a $12,000 day, that takes a lot of buy-in from your team, who, in my case, is bonused. I've found something that works well. They also understand that we like to be busy because busyness makes the day faster. I even heard conversations among the doctor and the team like, oh my gosh, it was 11:30 this morning and I didn't even realize that it was time for lunch almost. Like that morning flew by. I can't believe today's already Wednesday and tomorrow's what? This week has flown by. Why is that? Because we're busy, right? And so we enjoy busyness. We enjoy doing a lot of production because we enjoy doing our services for people. And when they accept it, we get to do more. And so it's leading with that. Now, I've thought of a really interesting concept lately, and that was, have you ever seen the movie Bohemian Rhapsody? Okay. So when Freddie Mercury is at the very last concert of his career at Live Aid, right? And then he breaks his song, and do you remember when he gets the microphone and he says, Deo, and then he points the microphone to the crowd, and they repeat after him?
Yeah.
And he goes for about 30 seconds.
Right.
And then they all say, Deo, right? And I was watching that, and Wes, I thought, he didn't get these 80,000 people to do this just because he's good. He didn't get them to do this just because he's Freddie. He did it because he's been spending years giving his goodness to the market, spreading it through his recordings, through his concerts, through his interviews. He's been working for this moment. It didn't just come to him just because of sheer talent. It came because he's created trust. There's the T, right? He's created that trust from them over the years of there's our C, of consistency. And that's why when I watched that concert, First the Hollywood version of it and then the live version.
Mm-hmm.
I was really captivated. And I was really incentive or just like motivated, just like this guy. Like if you have a startup practice, you are not going to be able to lead your team with that much goodness right away. It's going to, if you bonus your team or if you like throw a party or just anything, it's not going to all of a sudden have all this buy-in from your team. The consistent effort and putting your heart into it is absolutely crucial to get that moment where you're like, wow, they're repeating everything after me, all 80,000 of them. This is a beautiful moment. And how we can do that with our 8 to 15 team members in our dental office, it takes a lot of that consistency and a lot of that work.
Every summer, the dental corner of the internet lights up with the same question. What's the most important skill a new grad should focus on? Is it implants, molar endo, surgical extractions? And year after year, the answer from experienced dentists is the same: leadership and communication. These are the skills that elevate every part of your career, no matter what your role is in the dental office. That's why we're offering special pricing on the Leading in Dentistry Leadership Development Program, exclusively for new graduates and newcomers to the dental field. Whether you choose our 90-day guided course with bi-weekly coaching or the on-demand version to go at your own pace, you'll get access at a significantly reduced price. 50% off from graduates from this year, 40% off for graduates 1 year out, and 30% off for graduates 2 years out. And this offer is not just for dentists, it's open to hygienists and any new dental team member who has started within the last 3 years. If you're ready to take your leadership skills to the next level, head over to leadingindentistry.com/newgrad to learn more. That's leadingindentistry.com/newgrad. I mean, this is exactly what I was thinking when I was looking at the stuff that you're doing, is that you have people who have overnight results. But I would assume that people that have the better results are those who have some things in place already that allow you to see what potential there is so that they can use that goodwill that they have with their team in order to maximize their opportunities. It's not an overnight thing that just happens. It can, some things, when you change some language, right? You change some language, change some systems. Those are some overnight things, but in order to get that buy-in from the team, that's like a cultural change. It's not overnight. I remember when Pokemon Go was huge and people said it was an overnight success. And there was an article that talked about how the code that they used to make Pokemon Go, the guy who was responsible behind the whole thing wrote that in like 94 or something. And so how many years it had taken for that to be implemented here, and then it had a different application here, and then it worked its way into this, phenomenon. It seems like an overnight success, but there's a lot that goes into it along the way. And so Freddie Mercury, he's like playing the shows and he's building that trust with people. He's doing a lot of like boots on the ground stuff over the course of those years to have that moment. And I'm curious for your team, I guess two things I'd like to see if we can address with the time that we have is, when I first came across your stuff, we were having some difficulty with some of our staff. I told you a little bit in the pre-chat that our office expanded from 5 to 8 to now 14 operatories. And we have 20-something employees, and because the expansion came so quickly, the growth in the team came really fast too. And so a lot of people who are, even if they're trained as assistants somewhere else, come in untrained on our systems. And so that takes a little bit of time to develop. But then you're trying to onboard everybody and at the same time finding people that may not be a good fit. And so I guess the first question that I have is, when you find someone who's not going to sing back the Deos, somebody who's not going to give you back that energy that you're putting out, how do you handle that? And then what are the things that you're doing over the course of those years in order to build that rapport? You said consistency and heart and stuff. Are there specific things that you do to build that trust with the team? So there's a lot there. Unpack it as you will.
Yeah. Sometimes we are too quick to fire rather than trying to build and work the situation out. Sometimes we think, let's just get rid of that person. Let's find somebody who's a better fit. Everybody comes in with their own background, drama, situation, negativity, pros and cons. And so how do we mesh everybody with everybody, right? We are not that special. If you look at your office compared to various offices around you, you'd be lying if you told your marketplace, oh, we are way better than everybody else around us. There's a lot of good dentists all around us, right? Both as providers and as leaders or bosses. So we're not going to all of a sudden just attract all of the best talent just because we are who we are. That's called exceptionalism. We think when people think that, oh, I'm just really great, and so people are going to follow. Don't forget, your competition around you, a lot of them are really great too. So what are you going to do to build from within if you can't just be that magnet that's going to bring everybody? Well, conversations need to happen super regularly and accountability in your own way. If you're copying other people, like let's say you're listening to a podcast regularly, you're like, I love this guy. And then you're trying to be that guy, it's not going to resonate. You have to take what that guy or girl is saying in order for you to think, how does this mesh with my personality, with my leadership capabilities? I was a door-to-door salesman for several years, and I tried to mold my pitch after a guy named Jordan's. I thought Jordan was amazing, and then I started selling even worse when I was modeling after him. The reason is because I'm not Jordan. I don't have his swagger. I don't have his tone of voice. I don't have a lot of the aspects that made him 3 times a better salesman than I was. Now, take that for how can you bring out the best version of you as a leader? And you have to use that with your consistent check-ins with your team, providing that accountability and letting them understand that this is coming from a good place. We are here to protect the practice. This practice is what is feeding all of us. I harp on that a lot, Wes. I harp on the fact that why are we so okay with talking about money and talking about production? It's because the money that these patients, i.e. customers, we shouldn't feel afraid to call them customers. Our customers are coming in with their trust in us, and that is what is feeding all of our families. That's an honor. That's an honor. And we have to really just appreciate the fact of that. And so when we talk about this accountability with our team members and we say, we're doing this to protect this practice, which is protecting the care that we're providing to our patients. It all goes back to that. It all goes back to we want to do good quality. We want to do good work. We want this place to be substantially great. And I want to make sure that whenever you talk about my practice to anybody, a smile comes on your face, right? That's why I'm focusing on all of these things. That has a lot different tone than if you're just like, why are you doing this? Mm-hmm. You shouldn't be doing this. The handbook says this. Haven't you memorized my handbook yet? Right? So I think that it's really important for us to focus on the short term and the long term. The short term is the accountability, but the long term is the type of practice that we're trying to build. And a quick fire and a quick replacement is not going to get us there.
Awesome. That reminds me of a quote from Steve Jobs where he talked about his early years compared to his later years. And he said in his early years that he was so focused on having a good quarter. And he said, now I'm much more concerned about having a good company 10 years from now. What do I need to do in order to have a good company 10 years from now? And a lot of the doctors that I see that are more focused on those results, right? The results and not really what gets them to the result. They are very conscientious about their brand and how the experience that patients have is going to move the brand forward, or the reputation in the community, I guess I should say. Not necessarily the brand, but that reputation. And what I've come to learn through the conversations that I've had and the reading that I've done is that your brand is your relationship with your customers, and your culture is your business's relationship with your team and the staff. And I've thought a lot about that, not being quick to fire and giving people opportunities to improve, because the people that stick around, I heard a quote once, they said, don't be afraid to fire because the first shot alerts the herd, which is not untrue, but I also don't want to live in a fear environment with my team. I want them to know that, so-and-so struggling, and we've given them all these chances, we work with them. I want them to see the effort we go into to training people, so that they know if they're ever in a tough spot that we're going to have their back too. One of the things we changed on our Indeed ad that upped our applications tripled or something, it was pretty crazy, was I changed some of the language to say, We will give you the skills and tools in order to feel confident assisting our doctors with all restorative procedures. So like it's about getting them the training and helping them feel up to the task. So I think that's huge, building that culture and building that reputation. Something you said also was that if people, I think you might have been talking about customers, I can't remember, but it might have been about the team, where if the team leaves your practice and they go to a different practice in the community and they start talking about, oh, that practice is just money hungry. That happened to someone who moved into our area. She moved from a spot that I had lived before, and I drove past this practice all the time when I was in the Army, and I asked her about it. She said, oh yeah, they're just like money hungry there. And I don't want people to say that about the practice where I work. I want them to have the impression that we're doing things that are right for the patient. And I feel like correct me if I'm wrong, this came up just this week, when it comes time for me to ask the team to produce more or be engaged in getting that production to goal, they're not going to look at it from the perspective of me being money hungry because they've seen other opportunities or other experiences, other moments where that wasn't the focus. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If they see you trying to be money hungry, then when you try to incentivize the higher production, they're not going to be on board because they think that you're just doing it for the wrong reasons. Does that seem like a fair assessment of what you were saying?
Yeah. I mean, the tone and communication is super crucial because imagine you have a team meeting and you're like, hey, team, our average has been 95,000 a month. But this past month, we did 130,000. Let me show you some of the things that we did that is so awesome to validate that 35K increase. Look at these fractured teeth that we crowned. That was us. We did it. Look at these crooked teeth that we put Invisalign on. This is so amazing. Look at this missing tooth that was going to cause several issues in the future that we did a bridge or an implant on. Good job, team. High fives. Celebrate. Mm-hmm. That right there shows the money is an indication of good services rendered. So it's not just stopping at the dollar amount. It's not stopping there because then that's when they're just like, he just talks about money. It's talking about, and I was going to say, Wes, the doctor has to absolutely want it. Meaning, if there's something of a same-day opportunity, and we look at our assistant and we say, and we have time to do this today, and you give a thumbs up with a smile. Or you tell your treatment planner, like, hey, I want to be busy. I want to do a lot. That type of motivation, it's gonna be contagious. There might be a few people who don't hop onto it, and maybe as you're trying to build this busyness culture, some will filter out, and you'll get some new people starting. The beauty about that is when you want to change the culture, and people start filtering themselves out. When people come in, what they know is you want to be busy. And so that's how their culture starts at your practice, right? So that's the beautiful thing there is we lead by example. And we don't say, I want to do money. I want to do production. We say, I want to be busy. I want to do it. And then we prioritize what's important to our team. Hey, I know that you want to take a lunch early. Let's get you that lunch. Hey, I want to make sure all of us get out on time. I'm going to do this 4:00 root canal, but I'll get you guys lunch tomorrow. And, we just try to be mindful of every time that they make like something that might be inconvenience, we show appreciation through whatever way we can. We don't always have to provide lunch. We don't always have to give a bonus. It could just be a heartfelt look in the eye. Thank you so much. I really value how much you do, that you stayed a little late with me. I promise this is not the norm. I will make sure to avoid this, but I'm so glad that we took care of that patient today. Right. As you were talking, I did think about one situation where I had to fire a great employee, and this employee had just become too negative. Gossip was an issue, attitude was an issue, timeliness, time on the phone. And so I finally had to pull the plug on that one. Like you said, the first shot alerts the herd, right? And so the herd was definitely alerted. Like they're all like, whoa, I never saw this coming. And so I didn't mean to elicit fear. That's not why I did it. But it just made me really sad that even though this person had become so negative and I could not turn them back, it made me sad that in the past, I couldn't have my effect on it to not turn into what it did. I had to do what I had to do at the end, but it made me lament what I didn't do a year ago, little by little, to avoid this decline in attitude. So,
Hmm. So do
yeah,
you feel like
that's
you
the
took some
consistency part.
do you feel like you took some responsibility on yourself for not having conversations earlier to let them know that that behavior was inappropriate, or
That's
was it
exactly what I'm saying.
that's what you're feeling? Okay,
Hmm.
interesting.
Sorry, what
Um,
was your other option that you were gonna say?
no. I was just curious if, well, it's interesting because the theme of my questioning today is more like how do you get the team on board? And what I feared in asking that question is that I don't want to blame the team, right? I don't want to say like, hey, the doctor wants to, but there's memes out there of like it's 4 o'clock on a Friday, and the doctor says, yeah, we can squeeze that in, and the front desk has to deal with it. Because there is this resentment among team members that can breed if you push stuff on them. But I don't want to ever come across as I'm saying that it's the team's fault that I'm not producing enough. You know what I mean? At one point, I had an episode in this podcast called I'm Surrounded by Idiots. And it was all about approaching the mindset of, are you surrounded by idiots, or do you feel like you're surrounded by idiots, or do you feel like you're surrounded by A players who are doing their best? And that mindset shift between which one you lean to will steer you towards your actions and how you feel about your team. And what impresses me about what you said about this experience is that you took that responsibility upon yourself instead of feeling like this team member was worth giving up on. It was more thinking that the reflection of, is there something else I could have done differently along the way? I feel like just that attitude day to day, that experience aside, but that attitude day to day is the type of attitude that builds trust with the team. Because otherwise, if the team feels like you're pushing everything off, all the problems are their fault, you're not going to be able to build that level of trust. But I have had those
Yeah.
experiences before where there is a good employee and it gets to a point where it's detrimental on the culture and it's come too far. And to a certain extent, having those accountability discussions towards the end, I mean, did you feel like it was like if you had enough discussions and you gave them enough chances, they would have been able to redirect, or was the decision to let them go based on the fact that they just couldn't recognize the
Yeah.
the effect on the culture?
Yeah, so I did have conversations regularly. Sorry, I shouldn't say regularly. I had quite a few discussions with this person, um, but I could have been more effective. I could have done better. I could have been more consistent. I could have been more of a warning voice
Mm-hmm.
rather than just a, hey, come on. Um, this person had so much tenure at the office that I was a little bit more lenient in the way that I spoke, and I wasn't really a voice of warning. Um, I don't think that I can come across as I didn't need to come across as threatening. It's just a stern guide, right? Now, when I think of where she is now, I know that she is being a model new employee. She's being positive, she's being helpful. She's probably not checking her phone as much as she did with my office. So I allowed too much comfort to underperform. How can I make sure that I am giving my employees the opportunity to continually try to impress me and each other as if they were a new employee, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the story that I'm writing in my mind is how can I match what she's probably doing at her new employer?
Mm-hmm.
How could I have done that even though she was with me for years? I mean, this person, I mean, my wife and I loved her and her family. Like just it was really hard. Um, but to go back to your original question, like how do we get the team to buy in? It really is us leading with a good heart. Like, what is my intention for the day? I want to maximize my day. Am I going to run my team to the ground? No. Am I going to be mindful of, my team's longevity, of their um, abilities, of their comforts, like hunger or needing to go to their family? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't slave drive my team. And if I'm finding that every day my ambition is causing constant fatigue and exhaustion in my team, then I need to get more team members. More team members. I need to add to their support in order to catch up to my effort. If
Mhm.
if they're constantly exhausted, that is an indication of my bad leadership that I have not provided enough support for everybody, which is really hard for dentists as well because we have to be so on top of our overhead. The change of one employee to the next, I mean, if you have eight and then adding that ninth, that might really, I mean, that could be 60 grand to your overhead that you're not ready for. But if you're just like, dude, I'm super busy every single day, then you have to add that 60 grand of some sort of support. So being a good leader is being mindful of your team each day. And if they're not following you, look at yourself and saying, okay, are they not following me with the ambition because I don't have enough of a support system? That could be a reflection on you, doctor, rather than on your team. So I love that phrase, am I surrounded by idiots? Because how many dentists just think, oh, woe is me. I've got the worst. It's so hard. And then if we just didn't pinch our pennies so much,
Mhm.
and if we're just more mindful of what the team is looking at and where they need support. Now, I've been guilty of this. I've been super guilty of this. And so I've had to learn how to try to be more overstaffed if I were to be on either side of the line. Now, right now, I need another assistant, but my production has been declining over the past 2 months. So I'm mindful of that. Hey, if I add another assistant, am I going to, be in over my skis
Mhm.
and be too much over my head? Or sorry, yeah, over my head and too much overhead. That's
With
right.
the overhead, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So, it's a fine line, but I feel confident that I'm constantly thinking about those options rather than just like leaving it to the side and letting them all figure it out.
Yeah. One thing I want to ask you before we go today, because I want to be mindful of your time as well, but I do want to get as much out of this as possible for myself, for my own selfish needs. When you talked a little bit about helping people act that way that they usually act when they're brand new with the job, where it's that like giving it your all and really trying to impress when they're first there. When you have a new employee and you're trying to get them up to speed with your systems and your practice, do you have a certain way? I think your culture has been developed to the point where when people come in, they're kind of caught up in the flow of the river. They just get caught up in the current of how you run things, the busyness and the flow. But are there things that you do in order to prepare them for that, or to train them to be up to speed to the things that you're accomplishing?
So we want them to impress us, right?
Mm-hmm.
How about the vice versa?
Mm-hmm.
I have that conversation with new employees where I say, your job every day is to impress me. My job every day is to impress you. This is not a one-sided thing. We need to lead with our goodness so that we are giving our employees the best type of boss that they can have. Now, when I say boss, that could be the owner or an associate. An associate doctor is a boss in his or her own right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the most important thing that I want is that we do not feel like we're high on our mantle and just be like, impress me, slaves. No, this is something where it's just like, hey, I want you every day to feel good about my system and about your role in it and how you are executing. I want to impress you every day with how I deliver on my promises, how I do good quality dentistry, and how I treat people with respect. I just made those up. And so, second thing is when I hired a new assistant 5 years ago, she was very, very new, right out of her externship. And I created this culture with her to where at the end of every day, before she left, this was me implementing this lesson into her because I was just like, hey, come here, come ask me the question. And she'd say, is there anything you need from me? And that was my opportunity to give her a lesson from that day. Hey, when you're assisting me, I noticed that my that you didn't shake the bond. Let me show you why we need to shake the bond. There's 9 different things inside of the bond. We need to shake it vigorously before we apply a drop. Make sense? Yes, that makes sense. All right. Thanks so much. You have a great night. At the end of every single day, she would come to me and say, is there anything you need from me? And that would be my opportunity to give that lesson that I want to make sure that I'm not saying it in front of the patient because that embarrasses assistants and it undermines them. But that way, that new person can be in that realm of like, I'm impressing this doctor because I'm listening, I'm applying, I'm executing.
That's awesome. That's a huge takeaway. I really appreciate the conversation today. I think that's a great place to end it. I like the idea of leading with goodness. I think that's my big takeaway, and it kind of like worked its way through everything that we talked about. So thank you very much for taking the time to chat. And is there anything that you want to leave with? Can you tell the folks at home how to reach out or follow your stuff that they can learn a little bit more?
Yeah, Wes, I think the same way that you and I connected. I do a lot of leadership talk on my Instagram. That's fine. That's the easiest way for us to connect nowadays. So my Instagram is High Level Dental Producers. I talk about production, but so much of it is the leadership aspect. And I really do feel like I'm an introvert in all aspects of my life, except for when I talk about this stuff. I can just go after it. And so leadership's your passion, production's my passion. It's what I love to go over. And if you want to message me on Instagram, that's super easy too. But the word, just to end on my end, the word goodness came to me about a year and a half ago, and I thought everything is encapsulated under that word. Everything that I'm trying to lead my team with is under the word goodness. And I was trying to have a lesson with my kids, like, what does goodness mean to you? And they're like, doing good. I'm like, obviously, yes, good job. They're like, why would you ask me such a stupid question? But there's something to that, to where we can describe our efforts and ourselves under the word of goodness. Like, I just want to do this because I have goodness in my heart. Like, that's a good feeling. And we can lead with certainty that we are absolutely creating something good and special. And that's a good feeling. It's way better than getting a paycheck. Building something within our own brand, whether we're an associate or an owner, with the aspect of goodness is huge. And we're building something for the future, and we're building something sustainable, because goodness, that will always prevail. And so try to have that in your heart as you're being a dentist throughout the day, and I feel like you're going to have a really good day.
And that's it for this episode of the Leading in Dentistry podcast. If you learned something today, please leave a 5-star review and share the episode with a friend. If you're ready to take the next step for yourself or provide leadership training for a team member, visit leadingindentistry.com to check out our online courses and one-on-one coaching.